And here we are. Welcome back to Richard Sophomore, but we never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. What is going on? What is going on? Special late week episode. And why is that? Because, well, it's the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
People are moving. Coaches, players, everyone's moving. So we're going to be talking about three coaches today. I'm just running down the agenda. Three coaches today. We'll talk about Fran Brown, Trent Bray, and Sean Lewis. And then we'll get into about another 10 transfer portal players. It seemed like you guys like those videos, so we'll be sure to get those pumping out. And with those guys, a couple guys already committed. We'll talk about their fit there and what that means to those programs. We'll also talk about potential landing spots for some other big transfer portal names that are coming out. So, gosh, this time of year is absurd. It is crazy. Like
It's intense.
I am overwhelmed with the amount of names that I'm seeing in portal. It is crazy.
Imagine being a coach somewhere where you're traveling the world, the country, talking to recruits, trying to keep recruits in, trying to recruit your own team, right? Transfer portal guys, you got to go through film with that. Then you also got bowl games to prepare for. And if you're in the playoffs, you also got to be preparing for a playoff game. It's intense. I do think like some of these staffs are at a disadvantage. This is just awful timing. It's just a terrible calendar. We talked about the college football calendar, and we'll get into that in the off season for sure. It's brutal. It's tough, but you know what? As a fan, kind of love it. I mean, there's so much going on. There's no football being played this week besides Army Navy. Hashtag bet the under.
And
But
FCS playoffs as well.
absolutely, yep. But in terms of like meat and potatoes of it, like there's still so much going on, so much drama. I love it. I love it. I love it. Happy to do some content here for us.
Absolutely. And look, special announcement as well, right? And some more details will be in the subscription or in the description. We have a redshirt sophomore college football bowl pool.
Yeah,
What
we
does
do.
that mean? It means that you can sign up for free. And if you win, you have a chance to potentially be a guest on the Redshirt Sophomore podcast. The kind of episode that will be it'll TBD, right? Is it going to be trivia? Is it going to be transfer portal talk? Is it going to be previews of teams? Is it going to be coaching reviews? Whatever. We'll be able to talk about that. But what's the one thing that you have to do to make sure you qualify? And that is subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And for that matter, if you're going to go and take the time to click the subscribe button right now, why don't you go mosey yourself over to the like button, because if you like the content, like the video, it's a simple rule we have over here. So if you listen on Spotify, please give us a 5-star review and keep listening. We love you guys, all listeners, Spotify and YouTube. And yeah, but I can't emphasize enough, like we want to get as many people in that as possible. Again, totally free. We think it could be a lot of fun, but to qualify to win the prize, you have to be subscribed to our YouTube channel. No ifs, ands, or buts. Sorry. So, CD, anything else before we get into it?
No, I'm excited. We got lots to talk about.
All right. Well, let's get after it. Let's talk about Fran Brown. What a hire by Syracuse, by the way. I think like you talk about programs, right? And like, was Dino Babers put in a bad spot? Maybe like at Syracuse. Yeah. Was he ever gonna win like 9 games at Syracuse? Probably not.
Not consistently.
No. And we talk about like it's just hard to do it. You can't do it at a program like that. The weird thing is though, if you bring in a guy like Fran Brown and you start bringing in talent, like crazy good talent, even in a program like Syracuse, all of a sudden, those expectations start shifting pretty hard, I think. So far,
Yeah.
he's done a really good job putting together his staff. So I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Well, real quick about the recruiting aspect. Like you mentioned, there is a ceiling, or there has been traditionally at Syracuse because of your geographical footprint. Right? You are in the Northeast. There is becoming more and more talent there. Absolutely. You're getting some prep schools. You're getting some high level recruits for sure. And that's awesome for the sport. At the same time, like there's still, just a ceiling because of where you are located. The thing is here, so you do have to recruit nationally. Fran Brown, though, talk about recruiters and being able to build relationships with a good staff. I mean, it's a similar hire to, I see it as more like a less flashy, not as hyped media hire as the Deion Sanders one. Like he's going to bring that blueprint here. We're just going to bring in, he's going to elevate the talent in your room, and he's going to be able to put together a good staff because of his connections. On top of that, he knows how to win. He's been at Georgia, right? Like he knows that. Obviously, you can't win the same way at Georgia as you do at Syracuse, but there's a blueprint there to be had. You talked about it. His opening introduction speech was awesome. If you are a Syracuse fan, that had to get you fired up. I know Dino Babers had a similar one where he was excited. Didn't work out as greatly. I do think some injuries, especially at the quarterback position, hurt him the last couple of years. But Brian Bowen sounds like a Syracuse guy through and through, Northeast New York guy. He said 10 years. You got him for 10 years if you want him. And I do have a feeling he's going to make some strides there. And you've already seen with his official visit list, you've already seen, you mentioned his staff. We'll see how he does in the transfer portal. It's really, really interesting. At first, I was like, you know what? At Syracuse, can you really put together the talent you have? But guess what? Like, there are reports already that the Syracuse NIL connection has seen a significant uptick in donations since Fran Brown's hired. Right? It's been a week, whatever it's been, like less than a week. And yeah, it's super, super awesome there. I know if you're a Syracuse fan, that has to get you excited, right?
Yeah, and I'll talk about Elijah Robinson. It was actually officially announced today that he would be like the defensive coordinator there for Syracuse. It was pretty much guaranteed, but it officially announced today, right as we were recording this on Friday, December 8th. Elijah Robinson coming from Texas A&M, defensive line coach there. The amount of high-level recruits that he was able to bring into that program is absurd. He's young. He's 38 years old. He, in the Northeast specifically, right? The reason why A&M, there was a pipeline there, right? Specifically in Philadelphia, right? Pennsylvania, New Jersey. You're looking at guys like Don Bosco, Chase Basantis. You're looking at Tyreek Chappelle, Fadil Diggs, Anai White. Like guys like that came to Texas A&M because of Elijah Robinson and his connections that he had up there. It's so big because, like, look, you can keep the in-state guys in Syracuse, but if you can recruit Pennsylvania really well and you can recruit New Jersey really, really well at Syracuse, you're going to be successful. And I think Elijah Robinson already having that footprint there is invaluable. Can he call defense? I have no idea. It does scare me. It makes me a little bit nervous. That Mike Elko refused to have him as a defensive coordinator on that staff.
We don't. Do you know, was it confirmed that he didn't get a defense coordinator offer, or like I know you wanted to keep him on staff. Was it as a D-line coach?
It was highest paid positional coach in the country was the offer. So not being offered the DC, it makes me a little bit weird. I think Elijah Robinson can do it though, but it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. Regardless, they're going to bring in the talent though. So it's going to be up to what can they do with it. What can they do with it?
I will be honest, like it is easier to coach when you do have high level talent coming in for sure. And like you talk about Fran Brown, right? Elite recruiter. You talk about Elijah Robinson, elite recruiter. Another guy you got to mention is Nick Williams, right? Another guy that's just continued to recruit super, super well. He's going to be their defensive ends coach, right? Another guy working there in that defensive front. So obviously you're going to have a bunch of talent in there. Nick Williams, a guy, has ties with Fran Brown back when he was at Georgia. Obviously that's his connection there. He spent a year at Colorado, bringing in some talent as well. Super interesting. I think it helps that you have like all three of those guys. Well, more so Fran Brown and Elijah Robinson are defensive guys, right? They've been around really good defensive minds. Mike Elko, Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, PJ Durkin, if you want to throw them in there.
Yeah, great defensive minds, right?
So at least like, just because he hadn't had the opportunity to call it a defense doesn't mean he can't. But I think it helps having a bunch of, very level-headed guys there, defensive smart guys, even though they might be known as recruiters, they're still good, high-level defensive coaches and developers.
Absolutely. In terms of so a lot of times, you come in your new coach, there's transfer portal exodus. And to some degree, there are a lot of transfers leaving Syracuse, okay? Probably the biggest one that's leaving is Leon Lowry, right, who's an edge guy. He committed to Wisconsin. I don't know how good he actually is. I didn't watch a ton of Syracuse football to specifically watch Leon Lowry play, but he is the fourth lowest graded player on PFF on that defense. So starters and back, no matter the snap count, he was, I, I don't know. So I don't think that's going to be a huge loss. I talk about Jeremiah Wilson. He was hurt. I mean, I don't think that's a gigantic loss either. I don't think the guys that they're going to lose in this class are specifically insanely detrimental to the future success of this program. I think they're going to be starting kind of not even at ground zero, just kind of like I think it's just he's going to be starting with Dino Babers' team, but he's going to have the boost of that motive or that momentum that he has in the transfer portal. So this is a team that genuinely haven't looked at their schedule for next year. Like genuinely probably should be a bowl team next year, which is pretty cool to say, right? Now you got to figure out the quarterback position, but genuinely this could be a bowl team right away. And then that's the expectation at Syracuse, right? It's 6-6, 7-5, 5-7, like hanging around that bowl team, right? And if he walks in there and that is already a bowl team, right? And he hasn't even had time to build something, you can only think about what could possibly be. So when I look at this hire, right, in terms of grades, right, because when we give grades, right, we talk about the expectations first, and then we talk about grades. And am I wrong to say that Syracuse is just a bowl team in terms of the expectations?
Yes. That's my expectation of it. Obviously, you are a Syracuse fan. You would like to be consistently making bowl games and then being able to jump, every couple of years, you put together a nice group, your developmental program, and then you peak when you have a bunch of seniors. You hit on quarterback. You get a nice transfer class coming in. Everything comes together. Good staff, good coaching. And then you jump to 9-3 to 10-2, ACC contender, college football playoff, top 20 team. Regardless, yeah. But yes, like in year one, real quick, you mentioned the schedule for next year. I do want to say I've got to pull it up right here. Your out of conference is Ohio, Army, Holy Cross with a new coach, and UConn.
4-0.
That's got to be 4-0 off the bat, especially if you get quarterback right and a guy you feel like it. Then you get into schedule play, and remember, you have those Pac-12 teams coming to the ACC, and with all due respect to them academically, right, athletically, those don't really make your schedule difficult. It's a lot different if you are Mississippi State and Texas and Oklahoma come to your conference, but if Cal and Stanford come to your conference, like, is it really adding that many losses? As of right now, they're currently constructed. So you have Boston College
to New York.
Yes, now you do go to California. You go to Berkeley to play California next year. You also get Stanford at home, but you miss out on Clemson. You miss out on Florida State. You miss out on UConn or UNC. Like those, like you're talking about, like three probably the most talented teams there in Miami, which you get Miami at home. Like the schedule works out as about favorable as you can. We talked about Louisville in year one with Brom being able to come in and his over on win total was way higher than the preseason media members were because they're like new coach. No, but like this is going to be a higher win total than you're going to see, and you're going to be like, whoa, okay, what's this about? It's because of that schedule.
And you're looking at a guy who was on the Syracuse under this year, and that happily cashed. You're also looking at a guy that could be on the over for next year. I'm not gonna lie, we'll see. It's super early, obviously, but the grade that I'm going to give this hire though is an A+ because I think immediately when he steps in, he meets expectations, right? Like to get a B, right, means you meet expectations, right? An A is you exceed expectations. I think Fran Brown has the capability to way exceed expectations. That's just who he is. I think he has that chance. Will it work out that way? I have no idea. No one has any idea. But I give that hire an A+ because of what it could be.
I like that, and I do like this hire. I'm gonna go slightly lower as an A-, and I keep it in the A category because, like you mentioned, the possibility to exceed expectation. This is about as if you hit a home run with hire. This is about as home run as it could be because you're talking about a guy that will stay at Syracuse for the 10 years, right? Talked about it, and can recruit at an elite level. The thing that worries here is that when the bottom falls out here. I get he's an elite recruiter. I get that. His connections in high school and in coaching staffs and like his reputation is going to help him no matter what. The thing is, it's a lot easier to recruit at Georgia and to recruit at Bama or A&M and to recruit at Colorado with these other coaching staffs than it is to recruit at Syracuse. And the talent pool locally, the logo on the helmet is a lot different. When you walk into a living room with that block G on your polo versus, the block S, a lot different. I do think there is capability here, and I'd like to see more with his staff, with his philosophy offensively. We talked about Syracuse being a place where you can't really win traditionally, where like you can just out recruit people, you can just coach straight up, develop pro guys and turn them out to the NFL year in and year out. You kind of need a little bit of pizzazz there offensively or defensively. I think his pizzazz here, his changeup is going to be the talent level he brings in. And it's going to catch people off guard. Like, whoa, we're playing Syracuse this week. But look at the way they move on film. Like, they move, right? Those guys are not slow. So, like, that's where I think his path to success is. It does worry about me, this just strict X's and O's and being able to outcoach teams in his conference.
Let's talk about Sean Lewis. This could be a good hire, man. This could really be a good hire. And what's interesting though is like you're gonna see me give a lot of good grades to a lot of the coaching hires this offseason because I've so far like I've felt really good about a lot of these hires. And Sean Lewis is one of those guys who did it. He did well at Kent State, which is very difficult to do. Very, very difficult to do. He's got a really creative offense. I like the way he runs his staff. He's bringing in a ton of Kent State guys. Bill O'Boyle, coach offensive line. Matt Johnson, coaching quarterbacks. Zach Burton, coaching their special teams. So the formula worked in the MAC. The question is, can it work over in the Mountain West? This is a complete philosophy change, I think, for San Diego State. And in some ways, I think they needed it. But the reality is, so they were 100th in tempo offensively, right? This past year, 100th in tempo, which is very low. They're very slow offense. Sean Lewis's Colorado was 19th in tempo. So kind of a huge philosophy shift right there. Granted, I think they needed, like we said, they were 105th in total offense last year. And even defensively, 94th in total defense. This was a bad team last year. It was a bad team. Felt like some of those players gave up a little bit. Currently, right now, San Diego State has 18 players in the transfer portal. That is a lot. I don't know how many teams have a lot more than that. But then I was like going through them, and I'm like, I don't know if I really care all that much if I'm a San Diego State fan. The one that you are going to care about is Marcus Radcliffe, right? The true freshman safety, 6'3", 210. He was a stud for you guys. That one hurts a lot. That one hurts a lot. But in general, I don't know. I think this is one of those hires where you kind of give it a couple years, let Sean Lewis figure it out. I don't know if he's going to be recruiting at a high level. Like I've never seen him. Like he's been at Kent State, right? I've never seen him have to recruit at an insanely high level. So I don't know. So this is one of those good coaches. It could help geographically that they're in California, that you get some of those guys from Southern Cal, you get some of those guys from Arizona. So we'll see. He's going to have more resources than he's ever had as a head coach. So it'll be interesting to see. You got any thoughts on this hire?
Yeah, I thought it's a really good hire. I don't see him failing too hard at San Diego State. He's obviously a very creative, crafty offensive mind. He can put together a staff you trust. I do think what happened there at Colorado was not quite his fault. I don't think. And that was a very interesting move, like career move for him. And then, because he was like pretty hot topic in the coaching boards, and then he went to get the offensive coordinator, not just a head coach, at Colorado there. But I'm sure he learned a lot from that experience and is looking to take it over to San Diego State. I mean, it's about as good as you could have done if you're San Diego State. The thing that I would like to see improve from Brady Hoke's time, especially the end of Brady Hoke's time, is your recruiting. I get it. You don't have to recruit top 40 nationally, but you can be in the top 55 for sure, top 50, because like your location you mentioned is really good. You do have the resources in the Mountain West. You have one of the better resources programs in the Mountain West to compete with a lot of other teams in there. I don't know. I thought Brady Hoke, he was getting older. I don't know if the drive for recruiting was quite there as he had in the early days of San Diego State. But yeah, this is interesting. I like this. You mentioned the staff he's putting together. I liked it a lot. They're keeping some defensive guys over from Brady Hook's team, as to keep that good defenses there. I like that. But we'll see. I like it. I mean, we'll see what he does in the transfer portal. I think they have to replace Maiden, the quarterback. It sounds like he's out of eligibility. So that'll be step one. But I think
Is
if
he
you're
really? I don't know.
yeah, dude, I think so. I think this is his COVID year he used because he's been in college since 2018. So 18, 19 was a red shirt, and then 22, 23, 24, 20. I don't know. I'm pretty sure from when I could check online is he's out of eligibility. Maybe I'm
Okay.
sure he can apply for one because of the transfer and whatever else. Like, who knows about eligibility? But regardless, I like Maiden, but Sean
He
Lewis, I don't
played.
think will have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He might be out of eligibility. Huh.
I think
Well,
Sean Lewis, he'll be able to find one in the quarterback. I think if you're a quarterback, Colin Schlee, I believe he still has eligibility. Go back with Sean Lewis.
that'd be crazy.
Just go a little bit south from UCLA. But I'm sure that's a pretty attractive position to be at if you are a quarterback in the portal.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them. I was looking at, you know, On Three does a really good job. I think 24/7 is kind of the premier recruiting website. I think On Three does a really good job transfer portal. They have 17 4-star quarterbacks in the portal. That's crazy. Like last year, there was like 9 or 10, you know? And that's not even like there's so many sleeper guys out there. There's so many sleeper guys.
Source
So
B.
yeah, we'll talk about some of those guys. But I do think keeping Lindley on staff was an interesting move. It seemed like Maiden kind of Moose Maiden kind of progressed a little bit under the second year under Ryan Lindley. But the reality is they also just couldn't run the ball. And when you run a system like Sean Lewis, right, the Eric Cordell or Coydell, however you say that, Coryell, sorry, that's how you say it. Uh, you need a strong like inside power run game, right? You're gonna need multiple running backs and gonna need some nice weapons there on the outside. So you'll start to see it in the way that Sean Lewis recruits. He does a good job playing to that, and it'll be interesting, man. Now let's talk about expectations. I think the expectations for San Diego State fans is to be consistently competing for Mountain West championships.
Yep. I mean, 2 years ago they were 12-2, 7-1 conference there with Brady Hoke
Yeah.
at 19th in the college football playoff at some point.
So what is exceeding expectations? Is that winning the Mountain West and getting a bid to the college football playoffs in the
I
12
think that
man?
would be it right there. Yeah. Now
So in terms,
there's a lot of good G5 programs right now. And the reality of it is like that G5, the top of the G5 program's job has become a little bit more attractive because of that reality that you do have the possibility of playing in the college football playoffs. But yeah, I think that's about it.
yeah. And look, I haven't seen Sean Lewis with these kind of resources, so it's hard to dictate what he's going to be able to do recruiting wise. So I'll give this hire a B simply because I think he can meet those expectations. I think he can consistently win Mountain West championships. Like when I say B, I mean like he can meet expectations. I think so. I'm all over that. To me, that's a good grade to give a coach. Uh, I don't know. I haven't seen his recruiting enough to like where like is this going to be an elite team in terms of G5 that they can make the college football playoffs? I don't know. I don't know. So it does help that there's no longer a Pac-12, you know. But who knows too? Because like also, what if Oregon State and Washington State end up joining the Mountain West? That shakes things up certainly. So then all of a
Sure.
sudden, recalibrate your expectations. So I'm
I
I'll
do
get
think
I'll give it a B.
I do think if San Diego State's rolling, which if Sean Lewis is humming there, like I think the talent gap won't be too significant with Washington State, and then a couple years away from being in a Power Five conference for Oregon State, you might see a talent drop there. But yeah, the only thing that worries me is like, not that it's a stepping stone job for Sean Lewis, because that's not at all. I don't think what this is. I think he's a really good fit in San Diego State. But the reality of it is there are better jobs out there, and if he does, you know, start moving, like it's hard. And who knows what the future of college football? You don't want to be, in 2027 or 2028 when a lot of these TV deals are up to be looking for a new coach, because who knows what's going to happen. But the reality of it is, I'll go B. Yeah, I'll go B with upside there.
I think it's a great. I think it's a great hire. When we say
Yeah.
B, that's a great hire. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
what to say.
and he runs a style that'll be confusing in the Mountain West. You see people struggle with Air Force sometimes. Like, they'll take a little bit to adjust to Sean Lewis. Yeah, I like it. I mean, and he turned around Kent State, and they went to bowl games. They played for a conference title. Back when they had Dustin Crum, or yeah, like it was, yeah, it was. It's a hard, you mentioned. I'm sorry, you mentioned that it's a hard job there at the MAC with limited resources. It's a better job now at San Diego State. You're in a conference where you are obviously still G5. There's still, some resource limitations, but compared to the rest of the conference, like, they got a new stadium. They're a very talented area recruiting ground, and the logo is pretty darn good, especially with what your basketball program's doing right now. Yeah, it should be good. It should be good. When I first saw the hire, I was like, I like that. It's a B.
Yeah. What's the first reaction? I thought it was a good hire, and then you look into it, and you're like, I think he can win some Mountain West titles.
And also, you got to think about: do you think Boise State, Spencer Danielson's happy that this guy was hired here? Probably not. I don't think San Jose State's very happy, right? You look at some other team, UNLV and Barry Odom. I don't think they're super happy there that Sean Lewis is coming to town. I think coaches respect him, and you saw that, like, he got fired from his job, let go, but
Promoted.
relieved of his duty. But he had a pretty darn good job right away. I think that shows the respect level that he has in the coaching industry. That, okay, this guy's actually a really good coach. We'll give him another chance. And I didn't think he was a problem at Colorado, like I mentioned earlier. I think he'll do good things here.
Well, let's stay on the West Coast. Let's talk about Trent Bray at Oregon State. I think Oregon State fans, this was the guy that they wanted. I think you saw the formula with Jonathan Smith. You get an alum that cares a lot about the program, that knows the program really well, and you go with that. Even the Mike Riley, he didn't go to Oregon State, but he grew up in Corvallis, so he knows. That's the formula, I think, for this Oregon State team. And this is such a key hire because, of course, as we know, with conference realignment, Oregon State's kind of like on the outside looking in. And it's a tough spot. And you got a lot of guys transferring out of there that you didn't want to see transferring out of there. And it's really hard. Like, when you don't have a conference, you're not going to be making that money. Now, if they sued the Pac-12 and end up getting a bag, that's a little bit different. Maybe a couple nicer facilities. But this is a tough job, and it was probably a tough coaching search, if you ask me. But I think sticking in house is probably the right move. So, what are your thoughts on this hire?
Yeah, you mentioned it's a tough situation. I mean, the Pac-12 messed up just catastrophically, and you saw that the breakdown with everything happened. Every man for themselves, and Oregon State was on the outside looking in. And I like what they did with the Mountain West. If they make some money from the Pac-12, that's good on that. I like the continuity hire here in a time of huge turnover and change. A guy you trust in the building that players can relate to. I think is a good thing. A guy that seems to be, from what I see, a huge Oregon State guy. Stick with it there. But you mentioned, though, it's going to be a tough turnaround. It really, really is. You lose 2 quarterbacks. You lose your running. Well, your running back's coming back, but he obviously had some offseason issues with the law, and you lose your 2 tackles. Silas Bolden, you don't know about him. You got some defensive players really good. A tight end out too. It's tough. I mean, this was a really, really talented team, and it's kind of being, scavenged by some high-end Power 5 football programs because of all the talent there. And credit Jonathan Smith for doing that. When he took over, it was not a great job. he left it in a better spot than it was. But at the same time, like now things that weren't his fault. Like it's a tough job. And I like Trent Bray hire. We'll give our grades later, but yeah, I'm really, really rooting for him. And I think this was the right move. I don't know if it's the best long-term move, but I think you have to save face for the next couple years and try to, pull together as much as you can and continue to feed off of the energy that Jonathan Smith gave you. And it sucks that he left after everything he did for you, after being an Oregon State guy himself. But you also have to understand, like, that's the reality of the situation is like, this is a business, and Michigan State has a pretty nice check that can be generational for him and his family. So I congratulate him for it, but I think Trent Bray is the guy here for at least the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, and it's also hard too. Like, look, he was obviously an internal promotion, did not go with Jonathan Smith to Michigan State, but a lot of other people did. So that coaching staff is entirely new, right? You keep Hinson and Perkins, which I think Oregon State fans, if I had to guess, you're pretty happy about that. And now Gunderson and Devan come back to Corvallis as well. I think he's done an okay job there, managing the staff with what he could and plugging some of those holes. I don't know. I guess they aren't home run hires necessarily. I don't know. I'm not an Oregon State fan, so I feel like when you're an Oregon State fan, there's different things work. Like, not like when I think of a home run hire, right? Like, to them that might not be a home run hire. I don't know, or maybe they might be really happy right now. But when I look at this and the expectations, I guess we'll talk about the expectations because now they play a much different schedule. You're playing Mountain West teams. My expectation for Oregon State, given the resource gap between them and the rest of the Mountain West, you should be winning 8 to 10 games yearly. Is that crazy? What are your expectations?
Yeah, that sounds about right, especially early on.
If they continue playing this Mountain West schedule, yes.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, if you get a brutal out of conference slate, which you might have to do to make some money, it could be maybe 7 to 9 wins, but yeah, 8 to 10 sounds about right.
Yeah, but and that brings me to the grades because again, I don't know. It's hard to put the expectations on this because we don't know how this is going to change, right? We don't know how their scheduling is going to change, but I feel weird about this. This feels kind of like a transition coach to me. Feels like it was the right hire, but I don't know that it's going to work out necessarily long term. I give it a B minus. Meaning that he totally could exceed expectations. I kind of or meet expectations. I kind of expect them to kind of just do the thing, right? He could end up being a long tenure coach and just meet expectations, and the athletic department might be okay with that. But I have a weird feeling that I don't know that it might not work out the way that he wants it to. If he ends up turning this ship around the way that Jonathan Smith did, all credit to him, man. And I think if he works out there, I think he's staying there, right? And we thought about that with Jonathan Smith, but Trent Bray kind of got a taste of that, and he's been fairly vocal about that, feeling a little misled, and I'm sure some of these players felt a little misled. He's been pretty vocal about that, and he's a good friend of Jonathan Smith's too. So I think he's there through and through. If this ends up working out, this would be an electric hire in hindsight if this works out.
I think you know what you're going to get from him, though. Like, and I think that's part of the reason why they got the hire. You know exactly what kind of person he is, kind of leader. He's obviously a really good defensive coordinator. I mean, as soon as he got there, he stepped in. That defense took a next step to a pretty elite level in the Pac-12. He's actually from the West Coast, the Northeast. I'm sorry, the Northwest there, from Pullman, Washington. Our friends, the Cougars over there in Washington State. But yeah, you mentioned I'm gonna go B here, a little bit higher than Trent Bray than you are. But I just think my expectation might be a little bit lower than yours, and but I think we're in agreements here. Like, transition coach, I don't know if I would go so far as to say that. I think he earned the right to get this job. I think he's certainly qualified for it. But in terms of like situationally, yes, like I think what would help them having this shot. If Jonathan Smith just left right 2 years, like a year ago, right after his successful year, and nobody knew about the Pac-12 conference like it imploding, this would be a pretty hot job, a hotter job. I think it would have been some external candidates would have had their names thrown in the ring there, but yeah, I don't want to compare it to Mississippi State and Zach Arnett, but it seems like, I think it'll work out better than Zach Arnett, if that makes sense. I think it helps you. They're going to play 6 games in the Mountain West. You're going to recruit better than them, at least right away. You should have funding. I hope you have funding there at the NIL, because it's not your school's fault for screwing you at your commissioner of the Pac-12. We'll see. But who knows? Like, they could find their way into the Big 12 or some other conference too down the line. But as of right now, yeah, I think B is about right.
That's pretty fair. I really hope this works out, man. I really, really hope it works out.
I'm looking at their schedule next year. I hope they go 12-0. I really do. I think you can. 11-1.
Man, is that possible? A little college football playoff berth at a.
Well, wouldn't that be awesome? And you're playing some other former Pac-12 schools. I mean, right now it's obviously scheduled to change. You only have 6 scheduled conference games. I'm sure you will play probably Washington State. I don't know if that'll be the 7th or that will be one of the 6th. Then you have at least 4 or 5 to 6 more games on top of that. So we'll see what kind of schedule that shakes out. I would assume if you're scheduling this late, you'll probably be in the G5 ranks or in the FCS ranks when you're playing them. And ideally you'd be favored pretty heavily in those games. So you could win a lot. And I think that'd do a lot for the confidence of this program, for the direction and the future of this team, if you can kind of light load your schedule and then really take advantage of it and be like, yeah, look at us now,
It's time for transfer portal talk. It's time to talk about Walter Nolan. This is, by whatever website you want to look at, this is the best player in the transfer portal. This was the former number 1 recruit in the country. Plays defensive line. He could play defensive end. Specializes in the interior. He cut weight since he got on the campus at A&M. And every big school and their mom wants this guy. So, yeah, I mean, look, he had a real nice relationship with Elijah Robinson. He was very vocal about it. He said, look, if you have Elijah Robinson and you have the NIL, then you have me. You don't have Elijah Robinson. He asks for more NIL. They said no. At least that's the rumor. And we'll see what other coaches he's formed relationships with on these visits that he's on, and we'll see who's dumping the bag. This is a very good player. This is a game wrecker. He's very good.
Yeah, I mean, you saw in some of these games where he just took over at times, like a driver. She said, "No, we're getting on field right now," and he did it. Obviously, you would want a little bit more consistency down to down. That would be my only gripe with him. But at the same time, he's only a sophomore. Like, he's still 20 years old. Like, he's still figuring out, learning how to play the position. And obviously he was in a room that was pretty crowded as well with a bunch of other 5-star talent. And he was the standout in it, I thought. I mean, Malik Jackson played well. Fadil Diggs played well on the A&M roster. But to me, Walter Nolan, and it's showing right now in how many teams won him, the caliber of teams won him, that he is a freak. And he does live up to that expectation. He'll obviously be a top draft pick next year, I would assume. He would be an immediate impact for any team right now. You could pluck him on any roster and he would be a starter. He would be a freak of nature disruptor in that middle. And that's what everyone wants. Like, those guys are hard to come by. You look at what Sweat's doing over at Texas right now, when he finally figured out in his 5th year there. Like, this is what Walter Nolan could be for your team. And you see how valuable that is, stopping the run, getting interior pressure. Quarterbacks in college don't know what to do. Most quarterbacks don't know what to do with interior pressure. Like, that totally messes up who they are. Their throwing windows, their plant foot, everything else like that. And obviously, those guys are very few and far between. And A&M's gonna miss him for sure, but they got talent there but it's a shame. I mean, I know this was the guy that they wanted back, put a lot of resources in him as a freshman, and it paid out, but it's only for 2 years,
Yeah. So potential landing spots. I know he's visiting Oregon. I believe he's talking to Texas coaches. I believe Alabama's reached out to him as well. I know Tennessee's probably reached out to him, but also when he got hurt against Tennessee, he got booed off the the field when he thought that his season was over. So I
Way to
we'll
go, Tennessee
see.
fans. You just
Yeah,
ruined your
you
chances
kind
at
of just
getting
you actually
the
kind
top
of just
player in the portal.
yeah, you kind of ruined it. Now he's still got relationships with the coach there. He's from Tennessee, right? That was a big recruiting win, A&M versus Tennessee. Um, uh, well, I was gonna say Florida, but Sean Spencer's is now at A&M, and Walter Nolan's out. So I don't know. I mean, there's a couple other spots he can land to. I mean, I know LSU potentially. I mean, the original four that Oregon, Texas, Bama, Tennessee are my most likely. But who knows? And Ohio State could come in with a bag and snip him up.
USC. We saw what they
USC
did
could
with
come in.
Bear Alexander last year.
Alexander and Anthony Lucas, another former
A&M
Texas A&M
guy.
player, teammate of
By
Walter
the way,
Nolan's.
Walter Nolan and Bear Alexander, when playing well and having their act together, those guys would be disruptive. Holy cow. No matter
Yeah,
who's defense coordinator there, Alex Grinch can mess that up.
yeah. Oh no, I agree. So, but yeah, as an A&M fan, what does this do to Texas A&M? Well, you lose Fadil Diggs, you lose McKinley Jackson, you lose Walter Nolan. That is three of your starting defensive linemen. You don't know. You speculate that maybe a Nye White dips his toe in the transfer portal with that relationship with Elijah Robinson. The, this was kind of the cornerstone piece that you were hoping to keep. You lose him now. Now your focus is you have to keep Shamar Turner in the building if you're A&M. You have to. You need to, because as deep as you think that defensive line is, it just got a lot thinner. It just got a lot thinner.
Yeah,
So,
keep DJ Hicks, right? He was a big 5-star recruit a year ago. Keep McKinley Jackson. I know he's not McKinley J. Yeah, the
McKinley
5-star
Jackson.
freshman,
Dominique McKinley.
Dominic McKinley. Thank you. I know he's officially visiting this week again or to A&M, which is nice for them to keep him on board if they can. But yeah, you're gonna have some young players playing, probably a lot of talent leaving the building. Where would you like? And that work that was a strength of your team, right? Your defense, like DJ Durkin, like this was a good defense in spite of DJ Durkin, in my opinion, in your opinion as well, because of that D line, because of how disruptive they were on third downs, because of Ed Cooper, right? Like that. It's a lot. It's not just that you lose Walter Nolan; it's that you also lose McKinley Jackson. You mentioned Phil Diggs, LT Overton, potentially a Nye White, and some others. But yeah, where would you like in take your A&M hat off, right? Like where would you like to see him be in terms of where would he thrive as a person, as a player, and who could he like? Okay, this team was Walter Nolan away from being a college football playoff contender or champion.
Oregon.
Yeah.
I would like to see him out of the SEC personally.
Oh, come on, come on.
But also like I don't know, you get a couple more interior pressures on that defensive line where you got a pretty good defensive line, but it seemed like Washington's offensive line held up well in both of those games. And he's also great in the run, in stopping the run. Maybe you shut down Dylan Johnson a couple of those runs. I think he could have made a huge difference in that game against Washington. So definitely probably if I was rooting for the guy, well, I mean, I am rooting for the guy. I hope he ends up in a spot where he's successful. But for me personally, as an A&M fan, I hope he lands somewhere not in the SEC because I think he is that good. But
That's
wish
how
him
you
well.
know. That's how you know the caliber he is. Like nobody wants him in their conference. If he's not on your team,
No,
you do not want to see him on your schedule because, like we mentioned earlier, like he can take over a game or a drive and influence. Like he's that positional player, defensive player. Not many of those guys come around where, hey, like you have to circle him on every play, and like he could genuinely take over a football game and be the difference in winning and losing it in a high level football game. Yeah, I'm surprised that Georgia hasn't been, a bigger player there, especially because you look at like Oregon. Yes, they lost. They didn't make the college football playoff, but now what you can do is you could put all attention on this transfer portal class and finishing out this recruiting class. And they've been linked to a lot of high level football players in the transfer portal. Obviously, NIL helps. Obviously, Dan Lanning helps. Obviously, the success of the program helps, but also like they don't have to full prep, really. I mean, they don't have to college football playoff prep. Is that what I'm really getting at? Them in Georgia, you guess like your consolation prize is you're not in the championship playoff, but you can really gear up and make a run at it next year when you're in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Colin Lacey. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch this guy in action, now if you watched Colin Lacey play Troy, you probably saw a couple big drops there in that game. But other than that, this guy is a stud. Was he over like 1,400 yards receiving this year? He's one of the leaders in the country. I think he led G5, except for maybe he was second in G5 in yards, receiving yards. Yeah, this guy's a stud. Smaller guy though. What, 5'8", 5'9", smaller frame. Perfect guy in the slot. Another guy by the name of Tank Dell was also a G5 player that happened to be a little bit smaller with production and is thriving in the NFL right now. So it doesn't mean he can't be a giant talent somewhere else. And you know that he could be a giant talent somewhere else because there have been quite a few big name schools that have offered him. I'll go ahead and list them off. These are ones that we know, right? Obviously, when we list these, there's probably more players. There's more teams that are in play for these players when we list these schools. But A&M, I know is offering them. He's visiting them. Auburn, Louisville, Mississippi State, Oregon's offered him also, I believe. So you're looking at some big time names right there. I think he can be an immediate impact player. Where do you see of those names, or maybe one that I'm not even thinking of? Where do you see him fitting best?
Did you mention Auburn?
Yep.
Yeah, I would look at A&M and Auburn as two teams. Obviously,
he's from Mobile.
Yeah, so which sucks that he has to leave his hometown, South Alabama. But Auburn, obviously, a team he's very familiar with. But A&M, it sounds like he's on a visit with them this weekend. Him and Javon Harvey, another Sun Belt wide receiver from Old Dominion. Both those teams would be immediate impact players. Obviously, A&M does have a pretty deep and talented room there, but how exciting is it that you have Colin Klein coming in to be in that, and you've seen the success that Moose Muhammad had a year ago. You saw the success Anai Smith had this year, and you've seen like that would be a really nice pairing there with a healthy Connor Wigman. But I think Auburn, right, like they've been linked to a lot of offensive skill players, and that's the Hugh Freeze effect. We talk about it. Quarterbacks with scheming, like he is a really good coach to play for, especially the wide receiver talent he's turned out. Look at the NFL right now. I mean, AJ Brown, you've got DK Metcalf, Elijah Moore, like and others. Like they did a really good job there when he was at his time in the SEC. Colin Lacey would, if anywhere he goes, but I think Ole Miss and A&M would be two teams I'm looking at right now because reading the tea leaves, but also like fit. I think he would thrive at both those spots. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. I think Louisville would be really interesting. We
Yep.
know Jeff Bromley loves his slot receivers, and like small versatile guys, right? Like your Rondell Moore, your Charlie Jones, guys that you can just get the ball somehow on offense. I think like he could fit really well in Jeff Brom's system there. And they brought in the guy like Tyler Shuck, who I think is a pretty good quarterback. I don't know why people were pooping on that. I think Tyler Shuck is a pretty solid quarterback. The injury concerns are for sure
You're gonna
there.
get 5 games from him. That's the thing is you're gonna get 5 games from him, and that's if I'm
Yeah,
Colin Lacey.
but
You
like,
have to think about that.
Is he bringing in a rental because he believes Brady Allen's ready, or the other freshman quarterback that they got there? Does he believe that one of
From
those guys could be?
California.
Yeah, does he believe one of those guys is ready? I don't know. So, but I think Louisville could be really good. And then Oregon. I mean, obviously, just depending who they get the quarterback there. A lot of these depends like who they get the quarterback to be next year, right? Auburn, who's going to be their quarterback next year. Mississippi State, who's going to be their quarterback next year. Oregon, who's going to be their quarterback next year. So I think a lot of it will depend on that. But I think he will thrive wherever he goes, even with his size. I I think this guy's a dog. So let's talk about Daquan Finn. This guy's a stud. Quarterback for Toledo, if you hadn't heard of him before. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that a lot of people watching this, they only got to see him play twice, right? And the first time was against Illinois early in the season when he shredded that defense, shredded in a nail biter that they almost won. And then the second game being the MAC championship against Miami of Ohio, which Miami of Ohio is one of the better defenses in the entire country. Don't blame them for getting shut down there, to be honest. But I just think about what Daquan Finn would be able to do in a very, very elite coaching system with elite talent members behind them or around them, right? Some teams that are talking to him, quote unquote. Ohio State, Wisconsin. I think Michigan State would be a play right there. He's from Michigan, Michigan native. If Aiden Childs doesn't come over there, I think they could definitely talk to Finn. Michigan themselves, they're a player for sure. Nebraska, if they don't end up getting Kyle McCord there. And then one that I saw that I thought was really interesting, because we just talked about Sean Lewis, but San Diego State. San Diego State. So what are your thoughts?
Throw one more in there. I'll throw UCLA. I mean, you look at when Chip Kelly was having a lot of success with his quarterbacks at Oregon, Daquan Finn kind of fits into that mold. But yeah, you mentioned that the Big Ten schools. San Diego State would be super, super interesting. I'm sure Daquan Finn's very familiar with Sean Lewis and everything he did. Regardless of where he goes, you'll get 1 year of a really experienced dual threat guy that can beat you both ways. Might make some bad decisions, but also can make some really high level plays and lead an offense for a year for you. If you're looking for a bridge quarterback, this is your guy. This is one of the guys in the portal for sure. And that's being shown by like who's looking into him. Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, pretty high level programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of schools that can benefit from having a guy like Finn. Just the athleticism, man. Just the athleticism. Like it's a big loss for Toledo because he's got 1 year of eligibility left. Uh, tough, man. So I think he's gonna be great wherever he goes. Wherever he goes, I think it'll be awesome. But do you have a favorite? Like, do you see him specifically going anywhere? Like for me, I think Wisconsin. That's kind of my pick right now. I know he's from Michigan, but Wisconsin's kind of my pick right now.
That's where I'm seeing a lot of stuff in terms of where I believe he will end up at. I'll talk to where I believe he would fit in best in a second. But with Wisconsin, yeah, they're obviously Tanner Mordecai heads off to graduation. They have two younger quarterbacks they have brought in via the portal a year ago. You're looking at Nick Ewers and obviously Braden Locke. You got plenty of experience there. And I don't know if you feel pretty good about either of them. I think the upside you like with Ewers, you kind of know what Locke is. He's a really good backup in the Big Ten just because of how hard it is to have depth at that position there. Finn would be an immediate upgrade over both and allow both to develop for a year. I mean, how often do you get that? Like quarterbacks, like it's not the worst in the world to sit around for a year and learn from a very experienced quarterback and see how you want to run that offense. Phil Longo would be a really interesting fit for him. You did lose some wide receivers to the transfer portal, DK and others going out the door for Wisconsin. You lose Braylon Allen as well. I think you are transitioning to more of that Phil Longo, North Carolina, throw it around the yard a little bit more than you did this year, just because it takes time to go from one end of the spectrum of offense to the other end of the spectrum with what Wisconsin was before Luke Fickell took over there. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting. What about you? You like him at Wisconsin?
Yeah, I like him at Wisconsin. I mean, Michigan's always a play there, but I'm thinking like Dante Moore either goes, if he doesn't go to Oregon, I think he goes to Michigan, right? I mean,
but the thing is you could do both there. I mean, people are talking about with Oregon taking Dylan Gabriel and then also taking Moore and Moore sitting for a year, which is just an embarrassment of riches there.
But like Dante Moore went to UCLA, I think, because he wanted to start right away. Because I think he believed he had a chance.
Yes, but at the same time, like maybe he learned, like, oh, maybe I'm not ready for the Pac-12. Maybe I'm not ready yet. Maybe developing for a year and getting good coaching is the priority versus playing time. And I think he'll get developed at both Michigan and Oregon. You look at like Michigan could take Daquan Finn, start him for a year, play Dante Moore a little bit. And I think you could do a similar route there with Finn and Dante Moore. But I think Finn fits really, really well with Michigan because I look at Michigan as a similar team to Toledo, like the Max or the Big Ten's version of Toledo. Uber talented. You're gonna have a running back play. You got an offense that fits your style. I don't know. Michigan to me, I think he would thrive. I mean, he would play well at Wisconsin for sure, but I think Michigan he would make himself a lot of money and look at potentially NFL draft day 2, day 3 if he were to end up there and be successful as I think he's going to be.
Let's talk Jalen Catalon. Jalen Catalon, I'm sure some of you guys have actually heard this name if you guys are like NFL draft junkies or whatever. Preseason, like last year, right? This guy was projected to go end of first round, early second round. Crazy athlete, playing safety position. He was at Arkansas, and he got hurt, and then he just fell off draft boards completely, and goes to Texas. And I thought that was a huge get for Texas. I thought he was going to be an immediate impact player, and we saw it early, but then he just didn't get the snaps. He just didn't get the snaps. So now he's in the portal again. And I still believe that Jalen Catalon is a very good football player. So I think someone's going to end up with a very, 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 very talented player. 5'10", 202, versatile, just great tackler. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I don't really have a whole lot of like names like where he's rumored to go. I think it's been pretty quiet. Like, I don't know. I think he stays Power 5 for sure. I think he's that talented. And I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, he came from Oregon. I'm sorry, he came from Arkansas. I don't see him quite going back to Arkansas, although I'm sure they, unless as long as that bond has not been broken, I'm sure they would like to have him back. I see him as a guy that goes to a mid-Power 5 program and into a program that can really utilize him for who he actually is in the playmakers. I look at Rutgers as a really interesting name. I don't think he's going to end up at Rutgers, but what they did with Michael Flip Dixon, I see those two as very similar players. If you're familiar with the Big Ten, especially with Michael Flip Dixon, really good athlete, a guy that played, the hybrid slot safety, linebacker, whatever it is, big nickel position, and just flew around the field. And they put him in a lot of advantageous positions and let his athleticism and football IQ take over. And I think that's the strategy for Jalen Catalon. You look at a staff like Brent Venables and what they did with some of their elite level players defensively in that secondary. I think Isaiah Simmons, among others, to come to mind. That would be a really nice fit for him. I don't know exactly his options, but at the same time, like if you are the caliber of athlete that Catalan is, you're going to have options. You might not get to go where you want to go, but there's going to be people looking for you for sure. I was, like you mentioned, we were disappointed in his season this year. I thought he was going to be a home run fit for Texas, especially in a year where their secondary struggled and he still couldn't find playing time down the stretch. And it's like, okay, what's actually going on there? And Alabama, you saw him play a good amount and he kind of struggled in that game. And after that, it kind of trended downwards on how much snaps he ended up getting the rest of the way through. But yeah, you mentioned he's a really, really good player. And he's one of those guys that, like, not that I don't trust Texas's coaching staff, but I think in the right system, he can fit and be a really dynamic player for somebody. I mean, just like in Arkansas as a true freshman, right? Like he was a monster, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a monster. He was so good at Arkansas. He was so good, and like that was like the first key injury that Arkansas secondary last year when that secondary completely fell apart and was like the worst in all of college football. And you thought a lot of that had to do with Jalen Catalon. And you thought like when he transferred out, you're like, oh, that's such a huge loss. But yeah, I don't know what happened. So Jalen Catalon is from like Dallas Fort Worth area, so I could see him TCU, SMU, go home. Maybe stay in Texas. Over Dave Aranda. I mean, with Baylor, Dave Aranda's job might not be safe, but if you only got 1 year of eligibility, I mean, it's not a bad call either. Texas Tech. I think he could end up staying in the state of Texas as well. Willie Fritz over at Houston now could be an interesting name to look out for. So I think he could end up staying in the state of Texas, and look, I think Mike Elko's A&M with the way that their secondary is shaping out to be. I think they would take a guy like Jalen Catalon, but I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibilities for Jalen Catalon. I think he's got to really focus on like where can he fit because he's a high impact guy. He can impact the run game. Just who's going to use him the best, right? When he's talking to coaches, do these coaches have a plan to use him? And I hope I hope he understands that. And I think he does. So I think he's a veteran. He's learned. He's a good football player. I still believe that. So good luck to Jalen Catalon. I'm sure he'll end up somewhere, and I'm sure he'll be right back in NFL draft boards like this time next year. So
If you if you want to, if Jalen Catalan, if you're listening to this, right? First of all, we thank you. Please hit that subscribe button and like if you are new as well. But think about what I said with Michael Flip Dixon. I would throw in Minnesota Joe Rossi as well into that hat. I know it's cold up there. I get it. I get that. But at the same time, what they did with what they've done in the past with that slot position has been really, really successful. That's what I think that's your future in the NFL. That is a premium position. That is becoming a premium position right now. Look at Brian Branch. Look at a lot of these stars in the NFL right now. The corner from Kansas City, Washington, the first rounder, McDuffie, like another guy like that. Like versatility is super impressive and important in the NFL right now. Like go to a staff that's like you mentioned is going to develop you and put you in position to just play and showcase that to the NFL. I mean, you're gonna if things go right for you, yes, NIL money is going to be good for you, but the NFL draft money will be significantly more.
So Tawee Walker, one of 3 Oklahoma running backs on the move in the transfer portal. The only main one, right? Gavin Sawchuk, who honestly, as a Sooner fan, that's the guy you wanted to keep. Gavin Sawchuk's been an absolute monster. But Tawee Walker is very good in his own right. Had a very good game against Texas. Had a good game against Oklahoma State. Um, I I like him as a player. I like him as a player. This is a guy. He's from Arizona, so I could see him. I could see him potentially going back to the motherland. Arizona. I'm sure has some roster spots open from Arizona State. Certainly does. Uh, maybe West Texas, maybe like Texas Tech. So those are just a couple schools that I thought he might fit pretty decently at. You have any thoughts on Tawee Walker's player or where he might end up?
Yeah, I don't. We mentioned I thought he was a good player at Oklahoma. I don't quite see him being an elite high-end running back where he's a 3-down guy where you can get him the ball in space, let him do his thing. But in terms of like his positional need right now, like people need bruisers, like physical running backs to get short yardage. Like he's gonna have a bunch of suitors, right? I know many teams are looking for, maybe that complement to, you're that thunder to that lightning, which Tawee Walker could be. I like his pass blocking. I don't love it. It's got better throughout the year, I believe. But which is obviously a very important stat, especially if you have a young running back as well. And you also want to look at the NFL upside. Like you look at Roshan Johnson, just go across that Red River rivalry. Like he's a guy that got drafted so high where he was because of special teams and because of pass blocking he was so good at. Yeah, I don't know. I like him there. Oklahoma fans obviously gonna miss him. I know that staff's gonna miss him, but I think he'll find a good spot in the portal where someone can use him well. I don't know if he'll get, 300 carries, whatever, 400 carry, 300 carries, but definitely 150, 175 is a very good spot for him, and then take his talent to the NFL for sure.
Yeah, some other schools that I was thinking about, that might need running backs. San Diego State is one of them for sure. I think they would love a good running back in Tawee Walker if he's willing to go West Coast. I don't know what schools Walker's camp is talking to these days, but he could end up staying in the Big 12. For all I know, he could say, "Hey, let's go over to Waco, right? Get some time there. Maybe Houston, Cincinnati. I know Corey Connor's pretty good, but could be in the market for a guy like Tawee Walker. So I think he's got a lot of options. As a running back, it's weird because like running back is a position where it sucks because it's kind of quote unquote easily replaceable. Those are words that I'll use that are not necessarily my words, but there's a lot of running backs in the transfer portal that feel like they should be the number one guy. Uh, Trevor Etienne, for example, but we'll talk about him one of these days. But he was not the number one guy there. You just a 1B, basically 1A. But he's in the transfer portal because he thinks that he can get more time somewhere else, right? So there's a lot of running backs in the portal like that. So it'll be interesting to see where teams value a guy like Tolly Walker. He could stay Power 5. He also could go high end G5 too. You have no idea. You have no
And
idea.
that's not a bad strategy either. You look at guys like Tajay Spears, like Keaton Mitchell. Like you see guys have success in the NFL coming from that G5 level. Tyree Walker's a grinder though. I mean, he was JUCO, I believe. I think he even walked on to Oklahoma after kind of being a nobody in the fall camp. He's getting there, is making his way to being a productive player, very reliable running back for Oklahoma there. Yeah, it's a shame that he kind of is the odd man out there with Sawchuk, but I'm happy for him. He gets to use the portal for his benefit. I think he can find a really good situation. You mentioned a couple of those spots. I think he would thrive in all of them. I think he understands his value, and I think that's still a valuable position, even though it is the running back position, even though they're a dime a dozen, whatever. But I think for who he is, I think there's definitely going to be a need there. And he can package that into some NIL and some playing time and some film for the NFL for sure. Does Oklahoma, they're going to be okay without him? Sawchuk's okay?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Marcus Major was also another big loss there in the running back room, but Gavin Sawchuk is a dude. He's really good, and it was surprising me. I thought he was going to get more touches early on in the season, and he ended up kind of taking over late in that season. But this is not a Gavin Sawchuk video. This is a Tommy Walker video. I like Walker as a player a lot, so I can't wait. I kind of secretly hope he goes back to one of the Arizona schools. I think he could definitely thrive in one of those systems. So with two teams that I think are on the up and up, especially heading to the Big 12. Let's talk Will Sheppard, wide receiver for Vanderbilt. Last 2 years, he's been incredibly productive. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. Another one of those wide receivers that everyone is talking to at the portal. And now, Will Sheppard, there's another Vanderbilt wide receiver, London Humphreys, who we'll talk about one of these days, who's also in the portal, that is also getting a lot of attention. Will Sheppard specifically offers from Auburn, LSU. Actually, I don't know if he's got an offer from LSU, but he's from Louisiana, right? Tulane, right? Again, from Louisiana. Texas A&M, I believe, has talked to him. South Carolina's talked to him. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Minnesota has also talked to him from way up north. So a lot of schools there looking for a talent like Will Sheppard. I mean, he's big, he's fast, he's got good hands, good route runner. He was productive, even in a system like Vanderbilt, where the rest of your team was outmatched talent-wise significantly. So I think he'll be good wherever he ends up. But do you have any favorites to where you think he might end up?
Yeah, we talked about it before. Auburn with Colin Lacey, Auburn and Ole Miss, 2 spots. I can throw South Carolina in there. Those are really interesting ideas for you. You know you're going to get a good NIL package. And then at the top of that, you believe in those coaching staffs to be able to put you in really, really good positions. You mentioned LSU. Would be another fit for him as well. I don't know if they have offered yet, but obviously being a Louisiana guy, I'm sure he'd love to go home. Yeah, it sucks for Vandy to lose out on a very talented player like him. His teammate London Humphrey also in the portal as well. But yeah, Auburn and Ole Miss seem to be 2 teams that I'm really looking at. I guess Mississippi State too. You can throw in there with Jeff Lebby. Just right down the road there. Yeah,
this feels like one of those Ole Miss receiver transfers to me.
Yeah,
I think Ole Miss ends up with him, but I don't know. I'm not in this camp. I don't know what his parents are talking or whose parents are talking to. I don't know what coaches are reaching out to him. That's just a feel for me. So I don't know what the odds are. If someone was setting odds on where he goes to school, I would probably have I would definitely have Ole Miss up there. Like you said, Auburn. Uh, yeah, and South Carolina. Those are the big three, I think. I think LSU, if they come in with a late offer, I'm sure he would love that. I'm sure he grew up an LSU fan, depending on where he's in Louisiana he's from. So that's an interesting one to watch. I think Will Shepherd is very, very good. He was one of the better receivers in the SEC this year, I think. So uh, he's going to be
But
sought after. Last year he was one of the most productive. This year, London Humphrey's got some work in there. Quarterback play was a little bit down. AJ Swan maybe wasn't the guy he thought he was. Ken Seals, not great either. So I don't know. I think this guy's a stud. So I'm excited to see where Will Shepherd lands.
yeah, very experienced guy. Obviously, SEC competition. He's played a bunch of really good corners, talented players. I think it would benefit him to be in a really good scheme where good quarterback play, good OC. I think he could really thrive. One of those guys, like, I mean, Ray Davis comes to mind where like he's Vanderbilt and now you're looking at the NFL, right? Like he is a baller and everyone respects him and Shepard and good players. The NFL will find you, okay? Like even if you're at a Vanderbilt or at a G5 program, they will find you. But it helps for sure. Maybe make it a little bit more on the rookie contract if you are balling out at Ole Miss, right?
Yeah, I think wide receiver is different though because wide receiver you're not guaranteed touches, right? It's like it's very dependent on like what offense you're running and also if you have a quarterback that can get you the football, right? And running back, if you play running back, you're going to get your touches. If you're on the offensive line, you're going to have your reps. If you're on defense, you're going to get your reps. I think wide receiver is a unique position where like you see so many wide receivers in the portal because they feel like they're not benefiting from the offense in the way that they could and really showcasing their talents. So I think this is one of those scenarios. But I think NFL scouts know who Will Shepherd is for sure. So even with this, it could be also he just wants to win, or he's waiting on that LSU offer and he wants to go home. So I don't know.
A lot of those for sure.
Let's talk Toriano Pride. Clemson DB commits to Missouri. Now he's a St. Louis boy, right? So that was it's not crazy, but how about that? How about Eli Drinkwitz landing potentially the number one DB in the portal? How about that?
It's pride in his teammate, Matabuke
Makuba,
Makuba
Andrew
from
Makuba.
Clemson as well. But yeah, this Serena Pride, East St. Louis kid, right? Highly sought after guy ended up, spurning Missouri a couple years ago, making his way to Clemson. But yeah, he's a baller. Like he's a really, really athletic dude. There's a reason why he was so sought after. Love that Eli Drinkwitz is capitalizing on the success they had. You see that, like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome for Missouri. They couldn't close it with Ryan Wingo, but they get it with Toriano Pride. This is game changer. This is awesome.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of really good talents that come out of St. Louis, hence Luther Burden, Antonio Johnson, uh, who's the tackle that
Miles McVay.
yeah, exactly. There's some really good talent that comes out of St. Louis. And look, Clemson was able to get some of that juice out of him. He was pretty effective at Clemson, in my opinion. So we'll see what he does at Mizzou. It's gonna be awesome practices. See Toriano Pride go against Luther Burden. That's gonna be pretty electric. So I think that's probably a good move for him. His family's all in St. Louis. He'll be close. I this is a good move for him. I'm all right with that. Uh, I mean, as a player, I like him a lot. So I don't know. You have any thoughts on him as a player?
Yeah, I obviously we mentioned his athletic standpoint. I like the fact that he can play in the nickel as well. Versatility, especially in that secondary, is super, super important, especially with injuries, especially with lack of depth with the transfer portal. Having guys being able to play multiple positions not only helps you scheme up things, but also gives you position flexibility in an SEC schedule that's going to be brutal. That you can, hey, if a guy goes down here, you can plug and play him, move him over. Hey, we're a little bit stronger here at outside corner. We need an inside corner. You can play him inside as well. Yeah, he's still a little bit raw for sure, and I think Clemson saw that a little bit, and it was a crowded room there. And he
He's
didn't see
young.
quite the yeah, exactly. He didn't see quite the snaps I think he wanted. And I totally understand him going to the portal, especially going back home, getting some good coaching at Missouri for sure. But I think he can come in and play right away for you. You kind of expect him to. I get that, but sometimes these high level athletes, high level recruits, when they transfer, they're still maybe a year away from developing. I think Pride can get it done in year one with Missouri, with his traits and maybe the need that they do have there at cornerback.
Yeah, I mean, another low key spot that I think is interesting that what could have been, right, is like I believe both of his parents actually went to Jackson State. I don't think him going to Colorado would have been the craziest thing ever. But again, I don't know if Colorado actually even ever had a conversation with Toriano Pride, so no idea there. But again, I'm really happy. I like the hometown hero, guys. I'm rooting for him. Now, he's from St. Louis. He went to school at East St. Louis for his senior year. I've transferred there from Lutheran North. East St. Louis is technically in Illinois, so he actually played his senior season in the IHSA, but still a stud. Love the hometown hero, guys. So I have zero problem with this at all. Good luck to you, Toriano Pride. Let's talk Jake Johnson. Just 2 years ago, this was the number one tight end in the recruiting class. Comes A&M. There were 3 tight ends that Texas A&M took in that class: Donovan Green, Jake Johnson, and Theo Orstrom, however you say that, the guy from Sweden. All 4-star and above guys. Jake Johnson was the number one tight end. Donovan Green has actually been the starter. He gets hurt out for the season. Jake Johnson steps up with his brother Max. They actually had a pretty good season. I'm not going to say he's the most effective blocker in there. I think they put Max Wright in a lot because Max Wright was a better blocker than Jake Johnson was. But, I mean, the talent. Whatever team ends up with Jake Johnson's going to be very happy that they did. Obvious landing spots. His brother Max is committed to North Carolina already, right? You could also see him at LSU, right? He's from Louisiana. His older brother Max originally was at LSU before Brian Kelly, BC, or before Brian Kelly, BBK. But yeah, I think a bunch of other teams could also find Jake Johnson really effective too. Texas, Jatavian Sanders is gone. Do you bring in a guy like Jake Johnson to fill that role? Do you go to a school like do you go to Georgia? Brock Bowers is going to be gone. They've been coaching tight ends really well there. I know Georgia was recruiting Jake Johnson as well. I don't know. There's a lot of options for Jake Johnson here. I think he played pretty well this year. He's still young. This was his sophomore season. So he's got a junior season and a senior season. And actually, I don't think he has a COVID year. I don't think he does because he was here 2021. Yeah, he's 2021. So, but
He's 2022.
Yeah, so he's got 2 years of eligibility left, and you're looking at in some places number 2 tight end, number 1 tight end, whatever. Either way, he's one of the best tight ends in the portal. Do you have any thoughts as to where he might end up? Actually, he's not from Louisiana. Sorry, he's from Georgia. That's what I meant to say. Not from Louisiana. His brother went to LSU. Sorry for that mishap. He's from Georgia. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
Where do you see this guy going?
I think part of it was the fit in the new offense. Colin Klein, I don't know if he's the type of tight end that they really need with him. Obviously, he's a very talented dude. Any coach would be lucky to have a guy like him. But I think he saw that as like, well, maybe I could be, utilized a little bit more elsewhere with his specific talents. You mentioned Georgia. I think Alabama's an interesting one there if they're willing to dip their toe. I like Amari Niblack a ton. I think CJ Dupree is out of eligibility. So there might be a need there. They use their tight ends pretty well. Jalen Monroe seems to like Amari Niblack. I thought he improved as a blocker as the year went on. Jake Johnson, obviously with the ball in his hands, he's a lot better than when he was blocking. But yeah, you mentioned UNC. That seems to be like consensus. Obviously, no one really knows. Seems to be not a ton of information coming out. But yeah, UNC would be really fun there. Obviously, they've had success there. He loves his brother Max Johnson, which is awesome. But yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player. Kind of got thrust into a role. I thought he wasn't quite ready to take over. Being the guy in the tight end room for A&M this year, and it sucks that Donovan Green got hurt. But he did well at times, and you saw sometimes like that LSU run was awesome, was super special. But then you'd see a drop or a miss block, and like this guy still needs a little bit of time. But yeah, he's a very talented player, highly rated recruit for a reason. And the thing is about it, like tight ends are hard to come by, especially in the portal. Like those guys, not elite, not many elite tight ends hit the portal every year, especially physically gifted ones. And Jake Johnson's one of those. And so he'll have a numerous amount of offers and spots to go to.
Yeah. Although you are right about tight ends not normally being the portal. I do think this is a good tight end cycle secretly. I think Justin Jolie, I think Jalen Conyers. I think there's some pretty good tight ends in the portal, some sneaky ones for sure. But with the Baylor kid from Cy Ranch, I don't know. But yeah, any team's going to benefit, I think, from getting Jake Johnson. Now, is this a giant loss for Texas A&M? Kind of. I mean, they lose Max Wright for graduation. They lose Jake Johnson to the portal. You still have Donovan Green, who you wanted to be the starter this year, but is injured. That dude's a physical freak. And then Theo Orstrom, right? Your receiving tight end from Sweden. So you're I don't know. It hurts in terms of depth for sure, but I think Jake Johnson is doing himself a favor by potentially getting himself more reps somewhere else. Now, sometimes we talk gems here. What do we mean by gem? Uh, just someone who maybe isn't talked about a whole lot. And let's talk about Brendan Sorsby, Indiana Hoosier, freshman, going to Cincinnati, which, by the way, I think is a great get for Marcus Satterfield. Great get. Oh, sorry, Scott Satterfield. Did I say Marcus? Scott Satterfield. Jeez. That's on me. Sorry, Nebraska fans. Anyways, Brendan Sorsby's a stud, dude. Like, he legitimately balled out for Indiana. Like, he kept him in games. He put up points. Look, Taven Jackson was brought in last transfer portal as a 4-star quarterback from Tennessee. He was highly recruited. He was highly recruited to go to Tennessee. You thought that was the guy. Brendan Sorsby said no. Taven Jackson stunk. Brendan Sorsby comes in and he's immediately lifts this offense up to a new level. Immediately. He was awesome. Purdue, I mean, 226 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in that game, but I thought he played well there. The Illinois game, he was awesome. 289 for 3 tutters. I think this is a good quarterback. And he's also young, man. He is young. And I think Cincinnati, I don't know how good they feel about their like Lichtenberg or any of these other guys. I mean, they brought in Emory Jones as like kind of like a last resort. And that didn't really work out for them. I think this is a giant, giant upgrade and a boost to that quarterback room and a guy that you're going to have for several years. So I'm a huge fan. 6'3", 230. He's got the size. I think he's got the arm talent. Let's go. Let's go, Cincy. Come on. This is a big win.
This was huge. I think they capitalized. We talked about it with Max Brosmer in Minnesota a couple of days ago. They got in early on a guy that when all the dust settles with the top end quarterbacks in the portal, he's going to be a guy that a lot of teams wish, well, maybe we should have put our eggs in his basket, right? Like he is a baller as a young guy with not a ton of talent on the Indiana roster, not a ton of coaching that I really believed in. He came in, whether he was ready or not to start, he balled out and he gave it his all. I look at 2 games. I look at Wisconsin. I look at Illinois. I thought he played so well in both those games. 2 teams that have pretty darn good defenses. I think he's going to translate really well to Cincinnati offense. You mentioned some of the younger quarterbacks on Cincinnati's roster. Don't quite know if they were ready to start this year. Brady Drogas, a guy that they liked out of high school. I liked him as well. But Sorsby was a huge get for him. I really like what this could turn out to be. I thought Emory Jones, you mentioned him, was kind of a just a Band-Aid right on the quarterback position in year 1 there. Sorsby's legit. I think this is awesome. Cincinnati fans, deservingly so, are really excited for this because you needed this. It was a tough year for you, right? Let's not sugarcoat it, but Sorsby is a big time get.
Yeah, and like here's the thing too, like they got him early. We talked about this like with some certain programs, like Minnesota, getting Max Brosmer really early, getting Brendan Sorsby really early was really nice for him. I mean, Brendan Sorsby being from Texas, who knows? Like Baylor could be in the market for a quarterback. Like they don't like
Yeah.
Jake Spavital just got there. Uh, Blake Shapen's in the transfer portal. Like I don't know if they even know that they have a quarterback in Sawyer Robertson. Brendan Sorsby could have been in the market there at Baylor. I don't know. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but I think Brendan Sorsby was a really good guy, and you got on him early. You evaluated him. You liked him. I like him. You like him, and you got him. So good work by Cincinnati there getting Brendan Sorley. Uh, I wish him luck. I think he's going to be awesome. Just wait, guys. I think he's going to be awesome.
I do want to mention we talked about it with Brosmer again. Like this is a big deal in getting other guys to get into the the boat, as you might call it, for Cincinnati. It's an early transfer portal cycle, and you get a quarterback. And also another reason why the move to the Big 12 was such a big deal for Cincinnati recruiting wise. I get it. The Big 12 might not be what it used to be, but it's still the Big 12. It's still a Power 5 conference. And geographically, you mentioned he's from Texas. You are getting your foot into Texas recruiting. That is massive. That cannot be understated for Cincinnati. And not only could you offer them early playing time, good coaching, talented wide receivers, yada, yada, yada. I like their tight end as well. But you also, hey, I know you're going to miss home, but you can go back and play them. Your family can come see you. We're going to play Texas schools, in Texas like 3 or 4 times a year. It's awesome. This was huge for Sorsby. It's working out for you right now if you're Cincinnati. He seems excited to get there. He's talking about the talent they're bringing back. He understands that it was a disappointing year, but I don't know. For a guy that had a good amount of options to pick Cincinnati pretty darn quickly and pretty firm and can I don't know the word, but like conviction is awesome. It's a really good side for Cincinnati.
Absolutely. It's about Jacques Moore. Another gem. Now, On 3 has Jacques Moore rated pretty high, actually, in their running back ratings, which I respect because everyone wants to talk about Jordan Waters because he was the quote unquote starting running back there at Duke. But the more you watch film of Jacques Moore, he's slippery, which I use that as an adjective to describe running backs. Slippery, right? Very, very slippery. He runs so hard. This guy runs so hard. He played at Duke this year. If you didn't know, go back, watch number 9, right? Watch number 9. And I think year before he was number 20, 22, something like that. He changed his number. This guy's awesome. I think he's going to land somewhere and he's going to be an immediate impact player. He will be the starter wherever he goes. He's that good. And the schools that have already reached out to him, Arkansas, right? Raheem Sanders, obviously in the portal. I think he'd be a great fit at Arkansas. Virginia Tech has reached out to him as well. I think he'd be an immediate impact there. Indiana's reached out. I don't know how many other schools have reached out to him, but he's from Florida. So I could see a school like UCF reaching out to him, right? But Don Chaney's in the portal, right, for Miami. So look, if Miami reaches out to him, that I don't think that's crazy either. So I don't know. I think Jacques Moore is a stud, and he's awesome. If you got to watch him play against Wake Forest too, like that was what's his name? Grayson Loftus' first game as a starting quarterback. They're Duke's third string quarterback going into this year. He struggled that game. Grayson Loftus struggled that game. And part of the reason why they had success moving the ball up and down the field late in the game, well, Grayson Loftus actually balled out in the fourth quarter, but early in the game, it was Jacques Moore. That was it. Not Jordan Waters. It was Jacques Moore. This guy's awesome. I love him. If you have a chance to watch him play football. He plays hard.
Yeah, I do like the way he also, we talk about running backs, like 3-down versatility. He can pick up blitzes. which is a super valued position or super valued part of the position, and also running routes to the backfield. If I'm him, I'm looking to go somewhere creative that uses their running backs in all three facets or in all the facets of the game. You mentioned he's good. He's really good. I assume he stays over on the East Coast in the ACC, but Arkansas without Petrino, not a bad place to be either. I know Indiana needs some running back help. I believe he's got an offer from there. Yeah, you mentioned like there's a reason we're talking about him. We are really high on him, and yeah, he got overshadowed by some other really good players on Duke this year, but he was part of the reason why that offense, even without the quarterbacks you mentioned, was still able to win some football games because of how explosive they were, even though like everyone knew they couldn't throw the ball. But hey, we got more back there. Number 9, he could still do his thing. It was awesome. Yeah, he's a very special player.
Yeah, I love him a lot. And I say Jim, I just don't think now On3 does a good job. We talked about their transfer portal ratings. They have them pretty high. I just think not enough people are talking about him. So when I say Jim, this isn't like a low rated, like not even rated transfer, like guy you've never heard of. Now chances are you probably haven't heard of Jacques Wismore if you're watching this. Maybe you are. If you're a Duke fan, maybe you are. But he's good. This is a big loss for Duke, I think. Losing Jordan Waters and Jacques Wismore, both important players in that run game. On top of that, Riley Leonard. Uh, So the coaching changed. I think Manny Diaz has his work cut out for him. So I mean, we'll see what goes on there. Does Manny Diaz rehire Kevin Johns and keep that offense going? That continuity? I don't know, but I don't think it really matters because there's not going to be a whole lot of continuity on that offense in terms of players. So in terms of personnel. So
He also could come back to Duke as well. Like you mentioned that, like
he could. He
that'd be
could end up
nice.
doing that. But I think he'd be suited better somewhere else. I think this is probably a good decision for him. So good luck to Jacques Wismore. I think you're a stud. And that is it for episode 43 of the Redshirt Sophomore. Thank you for hanging out. Make sure you guys, if you like the content, like the video. It's that simple. And also subscribe. And you know what else you need to do? Go to the link in the description and make sure you sign up for the Redshirt Sophomore College Football Bowl Pool. Right? You have till December 16th till kickoff to get all those picks in. You're going to be picking teams. You're going to be assigning confidence points. And that's it. It's going to be awesome. It's free. Did I say it was free? It is free to do that. And the winner has a chance to be a guest on the Redshirt Sophomore podcast. And I'll also say this. You have some stiff competition because me and CD are historically pretty decent in these bowl pools. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. But make sure to qualify for the prize that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. And while you're doing that, if you're listening on Spotify, just go to YouTube, subscribe. It's that easy. But if you're on Spotify listening, give us a 5-star review if you really like our content. And also, maybe consider following us. So thank you guys so much. The support has been awesome. CD, anything else for us on the way out?
No, you got it all. Thank you guys.
Alrighty. And we will see you guys in the next one.